All right, so exceptionally gifted children. This is actually a term of art. It has a technical meaning. And I suspect that many of the people here, at least if our aims succeed, will create some of these people in an increasing number over time. So it's probably worth knowing something about what they're like and what is best done with them. So for definitions, so exceptionally gifted specifically means they got 160 plus on an IQ test, which is 4 standard deviations above the mean. Theoretically, something like 1 in 30,000. There are terms for like highly gifted, it's 145 plus, 3 standard deviations. Moderately gifted, mildly gifted, profoundly gifted, and 230 IQ is called Terrence Tao.
Sorry, did I see 1 in 440 quadrillion?
Yes. 230 IQ, 8.6 standard deviations. You can look it up. Yeah?
Can you measure above 200?
I will get to that. So in order to get numbers that high, you have to return to the original definition of IQ, which is with ratios. So like the term intelligence quotient comes from this. So what you do is you come up with a bunch of cognitive tests. Some involve doing anagrams, some involve rotating shapes, things like that. And then you find that as children get older, their score increases with their age until maybe age 18 or something. And then that means that for any given score, you can, within that range, you can correspond that to an age. This score is the score of the average 11.5-year-old or something. So you do this for a bunch of different subtests, and then to evaluate a given person, you basically aggregate those scores, usually by averaging, I think. And so that number is that person's mental age as judged by the test. And then you divide that by their chronological age, and that quotient, which they then multiply by 100 and round it to an integer, that's the intelligence quotient. So for example, a 6-year-old who has the test scores of the average 9-year-old has an IQ of 150 by definition. So Terrence Tao in particular got the scores of a 14-year-old at age 6. And so that's where the 230 comes from. So it is necessary to use the ratio definition for very high scores because like 180 plus, so 40 million, like what is the average score of someone who is in the top 1 in 40 million? To figure that out, you would have to administer the test to like 40 million times n people, which is impractical. And obviously, this number of people does not exist on Earth. Maybe they will eventually. So ratio IQ is needed to even come up with a number for very high scores. The definition that uses the standard deviation is useful if you want to evaluate adults, because like if scores stop getting better at age 18, then if someone is already 18, if they're 110 IQ or 130 IQ, they'll max out the test. Like they'll get a score that is above that range, and you can't say what they are. But if you say that they're in the top 1%, you can correspond that to standard deviations. Yeah?
When on average do scores stop getting better?
I think I've seen some tests go up to age 21. I expect it is different on different tests. I don't exactly know.
You wouldn't typically see much improvement after early 20s. Like 25, you basically have that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious. I mean, that's certainly what I would have thought, but I was wondering.
Let's see, and there, as we'll see, the ratio definition is a good prior for mental traits. If you're wondering what is some trait like of a child of a given age and a given IQ, just scaling up their age by the IQ number is a good first guess if you don't know anything else about it. There are a couple of main sources that I'll be drawing from. Mirka Gross was a researcher who did a study on 60 Australian kids of 160 plus IQ in the late 1900s. And she wrote a book about 15 of those kids with lots of details about their lives and how they progressed. And then also there's someone named Leda Hollingworth. She ran at the Speyer School in I think the 1930s-ish in New York. New York, with its high population, is convenient. If you want to look at the top 1 in 10,000 of the population or something, and the local city has 8 million people, then you still have a decent number of people to work with. Let's see. So, what are these kids like? So among the 15 kids that were written about in the book, the differences show up in very early developmental stages. When they, the age when they sit up unsupported, normal kids, 7 to 8 months. For these kids, it was 19% earlier. Crawling, walking supported, unsupported, and running. It's basically 10 to 40% earlier than normal kids on average. The biggest difference, though, is with reading. And it's quite spectacular. So 45% earlier. So apparently the average Australian learns to read at age 5. Among the 15 kids, 5 of them learned to read at age 1, 5 at age 2, 2 at age 3, 2 at age 4, and 1 at age 5. And this is despite the fact that 9 out of 15 of them, their parents say that they gave the kid little to no help with learning to read. Yeah?
Is the walking striated by population? Are there differences between populations about walking?
I think that it is compared to Australia in general. I don't know if it's more specific than that. Mm-hmm.
Did they have like age of first talking on here? That seems like it would be relevant.
Let's see. I think there are some descriptions of individual kids in the book, but I don't think there is a table with that. Let's see. Generally they managed to learn to read at such a young age, even though many of them got little to no help from parents. It says that they got some practice from reading street signs, grocery labels, names of shops, and for 2 of the kids from watching Sesame Street. So there was a survey of like what they enjoyed doing, and reading is by far their most favorite activity. They just read an enormous amount. I think it was like 5 out of 15 said that reading is the most important thing in their life. I think they were asked that like between ages 6 and 12 at the time. And of course, they tend to read books that are written for much older children. In particular, they like science fiction and high fantasy and stuff like that. Play. So they tend to like to do complicated things. And if there's a basic game, they like to add rules to make it more interesting and challenging. And the other 6-year-olds tend not to like that very much. Quoting Leda Hollingworth, they were unpopular with children of their own age because they always wanted to organize the play into a complicated pattern with some remote and definite climax as the goal. In terms of sports, they tend to do well if they go into sports. Like, I think one of them won a championship, another was offered a position on their state's swimming team, a few things like that. Interestingly, they tend to pick sports that don't require them to cooperate with other people. Let's see. And then, despite the fact that several of them are actually quite good at sports, so 40, they said, like, here are 8 activities, order them according to how much, like, most favored to least favored. 40% put sports last, and 13% put it second last, including several of the people that are very good at sports and like had won a championship or something. There is a suggestion that maybe they do sports for peer acceptance rather than because they particularly enjoy it. So for friendship, the author says that one can, take it with a grain of salt, but for whatever it's worth, the author says that you can kind of observe stages of friendship. So initially, you'll let them borrow your toys, then you'll play with them, then maybe you'll trust them enough to accept help from them, but you wouldn't think that you would have any duty to help them back. Then the next stage is we're friends and we help each other. And then the final stage is we can trust each other completely. And so the author says that many of these extremely gifted kids tend to want the I can trust them completely, the sure shelter, as she calls it, at an age when many of their normal peers want playmates. She also cites earlier research showing that similar mental age is the most important factor for children's friendships. Like one study was described as, I think as early as age 6, they took note of the number of times that a pair of children chose to play with each other and also the total amount of time they chose to play with each other. And then like tried to correspond that against socioeconomic status and various other things, and mental age, as measured by IQ tests or some proxy, was the most important factor. And so, not surprisingly, given that often their best friends or their preferred playmates are 2 to 4 years older than them, like the best friend would be an equally gifted child of the same age. But because these children are 1 in 10,000 or 30,000 or something, usually there aren't any of those available. Second best is a moderately gifted child who's a few years older. So that's what this tends to be. That can create a problem, though, if the older kid is in a higher grade, then they don't have as much opportunity to be with each other at school. And I think in some cases, the older kid may face like social pressure to not hang out with the wimpy little kid from the younger grade, which is unfortunate. So social isolation. So Hollingworth talked about some results of earlier studies by Terman finding that the really gifted kids tend to play in a solitary way. So she says, they are not unfriendly or ungregarious by nature. Typically, they strive to play with others, but their efforts are defeated by the difficulties of the case. These difficulties are illustrated in the efforts of the 7-year-old boy that she mentioned. So in this story, a 7-year-old kid of IQ 170 or something brought his favorite books to the class to show the others, it's great, read these, you'll see how great they are. And the other kids laughed at him, made fun of him, threw the books on the ground, and pulled his hair. The kid cried to his grandmama, they just won't read. So she says that is illustrative. Other children do not share their interests, their vocabulary, or their desire to organize activities. They try to reform their contemporaries, but finally give up the struggle and play alone, since older children regard them as babies, and adults seldom play during the hours when children are awake. As a result, forms of solitary play develop, and these, becoming fixed as habits, may explain the fact that many highly intellectual adults are shy, ungregarious, and unmindful of human relationships, or are even misanthropic and uncomfortable in ordinary social intercourse. I suspect many of us in this room know some people like that. Regarding education, so Hollingworth, she ran the school where they studied really gifted kids, moderately gifted kids, and also kids who are below average, investigating what worked best. So she says in the measurements that they've performed, those of 140 IQ are able to master subjects, and I think that means like, it was described as getting top marks in a subject. Able to master subjects in half the time that it takes the normal kids, and those with IQ 170 take a quarter of the time. This is actually a larger difference than the ratio IQ would predict. Why might that be? Things that come to mind, maybe in their earlier, the fact that they've developed more in other ways, maybe they've figured out study skills or just more control over themselves or something. Another possibility is it seems as though one of the things that can manifest as intelligence is an increased need for mental stimulation. And then that probably motivates kids to, like, these kids would be more likely to just choose to go home and read the textbook because it's kind of interesting than normal kids. in any case, it's clear that there's a very large mismatch in learning speed between these kids and the normal age peers. Now, given that that's the case, surely the schools will allow them to progress at this 4 times the speed. Right? Anecdote. When the mother of 5-year-old Richard McLeod asked his teacher if he could be permitted to skip the reading readiness program because he had been reading since age 2, the teacher angrily accused her of teaching the boy to read. "You leave him to me," she added. "It's my duty to pluck the tall poppies." As mentioned, so 14 out of the 15 had learned to read before age 5, which is when they enter kindergarten. Only a couple of them were allowed to skip the pre-reading exercises that the other kids were required to do. I would say this is illustrative of the way the education tends to go, with exceptions, but it's the tendency. Another quote. So there was a kid who's, let's see, he was doing 8th grade math in 1st grade, and then there was this new principal who came in and canceled all the gifted programs, including that. So he was required to go back to doing 2nd grade math next year. The new principal was a politically alert young woman who was aware of the hostility of the Australian teachers' industrial unions towards special programming for the gifted, and the disapproval of gifted programs openly voiced by a number of influential senior administrators in the state education department. She was also made aware by her new staff that they had had enough of gifted children and special programs for the gifted, which they felt had been foisted upon them by the old principal. She stated frankly that it would be, quote, political suicide for her to establish gifted programs within her school. Marika Gross mentions an interesting contrast with sports. People, and including those same educational departments, seem to have no problem with the practice of having people scout out elite talent in athletes and then lavish huge amounts of resources upon them, one-on-one training and everything else, when their abilities lie in sports. But in intellectual subjects, it's very different. Kind of interesting. This is Australia, which is, I think, kind of known for a stronger egalitarian aspect, and the phrase tall poppy syndrome. It's likely less bad in the United States, but it's still not great. I come from Palo Alto, and I think there have been things over the last decade where they've canceled some honors classes and advanced classes and laning and stuff. Maybe these people will settle down after the people here succeed and allow everyone to enhance their IQ. Or maybe they'll find something else to complain about, who knows. For now, it seems like the only thing to do is work around these kinds of people. So, despite low support from the schools for doing advanced work, these kids still managed to get some fairly impressive scores. So, of the 15 in the book, all of them are at least 1 year ahead in math, reading, and spelling. Most of them are 3 to 4 years ahead in reading. Most of them are at least 2 years ahead in math. And 5 out of 15 exceeded 500 on the SAT math. The SAT is normed such that those who are taking the SAT to apply to college, they're probably age 17, and maybe a little bit above average for 17-year-olds. It's normed so that the average for those people is 500. So these people at age 12 or earlier are exceeding that. So the optimal environment, according to Lita Hollingworth, and also it seems fairly logical, is equally gifted kids of the same age taking a class paced for them. If that's not available, then second best is moderately gifted kids who are somewhat older. If that's not available, then just doing grade skips so that you're with normal kids who are at least at the same level as you at the start of the year. You probably learn faster, and so by the end of the year you may be above them, but at least this is better than the alternative of being with normal kids the same age. So what was done with the 60 kids in Australia? So 33 out of 60 of them were not allowed to skip any grades at all. 5 of them skipped 1 grade, 5 skipped 2 grades, and 17 skipped 3 or more grades by the time they left high school, which Miraca Gross is actually kind of impressive that many were allowed, given the general attitude towards gifted education. Who was permitted to skip tended to be determined by if a staff member had previous experience with gifted education or was familiar with the literature on the subject. Those tended to support the acceleration of the kid. Another aspect is when the kid's abilities were primarily in math, they also were more likely to be allowed to accelerate. I expect this is because if you're really advanced in math, it's pretty easy to make the case even to a hostile audience that, look, the kid is correctly doing algebra problems. There's no point in making them sit through pre-algebra. Whereas if the kid has a very far advanced understanding of English, it's a lot harder to say, well, the kid is reading books for much older people. Yeah, but are they really understanding it? Like, you can, I guess, show some level of understanding, but it takes a lot more effort. It's a lot less legible than in math. So I would say that these factors being major determinants in their acceleration makes this kind of a nice natural randomization of the study. It's not perfect, but I think it's decent. And so the results are acceleration was uniformly good. So I'm going to read several paragraphs from the study. Let's see. So starting with a couple of examples of acceleration. Christopher Otway. These kids are given pseudonyms. Chris is a young man of truly phenomenal ability. Testing on the Stanford Binet LM, 1 month short of his 11th birthday, revealed a mental age of 22. So that's a ratio of 2, so 200 IQ. 5 months later, he scored 710 on the SAT Math. His remarkable talent in math and language was evident from his earliest years. By age 4, he was capable of 4th grade math. Fortunately, the principal of Chris's primary school had visited Johns Hopkins University on a Churchill Fellowship. He had met several young people from the Study of Mathematically Precocious Youth, the SMPY, who had been radically accelerated. Radically accelerated means skipped 3 more grades. Who had been radically accelerated and had familiarized himself with some of the research on acceleration. Accordingly, he was responsive to Chris's academic and social needs. While in grade 1, Chris was accelerated to work with 5th grade students for math and 6th grade students for English. The following year, he did math with 7th grade students. This proved so successful that at the end of his 2nd grade year, Chris made a full grade skip to 4th grade, but took math with 8th grade. By age 12, he was theoretically enrolled in 9th grade, but took 5 subjects, physics, chemistry, English, math, and economics, with 11th grade students 5 years older than him. He was extremely happy, loved school, and was popular with his classmates despite the difference in age. The following year, Chris then took the rather unusual course of repeating 11th grade with an additional 5 subjects: English, legal studies, Australian history, accounting, and biology. This was by no means an attempt to reverse the acceleration process. It was Chris's decision because he felt he would be too young to enter university at age 13, which he was qualified to do. And this alternate plan would give him a breadth of studies that would be otherwise unavailable. He repeated this process in 12th grade, doing twice the number of subjects spread over 2 years, and thus graduating with 10 university entrance subjects instead of 5. In both his 12th grade years, he was one of the top scoring students in his state. He entered university at 16 years, 2 months, graduating with Bachelor of Science, First Class Honors in Computer Science and Mathematics at age 20. Chris won a scholarship to a major British university and graduated with a PhD in pure math at age 24. Since then, based in London, he works for a worldwide consultancy assisting other companies with financial strategies. Some may have opinions about the career choice in particular, but clearly he's capable and is able to do what he wants. Sally Huang. Sally was born in Australia to Malaysian parents. She scored 165 on the Stanford Binet LM at 6 years, 11 months. Unfortunately, the psychologist stopped the test before Sally had reached her ceiling, and I believe her true IQ is significantly higher than this. From her earliest years, Sally displayed phenomenal gifts in math and English. Her elementary and high schools in a large country town arranged a series of carefully planned and monitored grade skips coupled with subject acceleration. Sally entered second grade at age 6, fourth grade the following year, seventh grade at 9, and compacted the 6 years of high school into 4, graduating at age 13. Sally's path through school was assisted by her math teacher and the elementary school principal, who had a strong interest in gifted education and has since earned a postgraduate degree in this field. She entered university on scholarship at 13 and a half years old as one of the top scoring 12th grade students in her state, again, despite being much younger than the other ones. Sally's studies focused on the physical and mathematical sciences, but she also studied Chinese, Japanese, and music. She was allowed to skip first-year university math and enrolled in the science faculty's second-year pure and applied math classes. Her enrollment in university required her to move to the city and stay during the week in the home of friends of her parents. This gave her access both to the social life of the university and to her family. She gained a Bachelor of Science first-class honors at 16 years, 8 months, and, like Chris Otway, won a full postgraduate scholarship to a major British university. She got her PhD in theoretical physics at age 21 with 5 publications in major journals. She participated fully in the academic and social life of the university and had many warm and supportive friendships. She speaks fluent Chinese and Japanese, is an accomplished pianist, and holds a first Dan black belt in Taekwondo. The following year, at a major European university, she completed a postdoctoral MBA aimed specifically at postgraduates with a science and engineering background, and in 2004 accepted a management appointment with the firm in which she did her internship. Sally is certain that acceleration brought her nothing but benefits. Quote, "If I had not been accelerated, I feel sure that I would have become quite frustrated, as indeed I often did at various stages, and still do when I attend things like mixed ability language classes. But the frustration in that case would have been prolonged and severe, having a detrimental effect not only on my love for learning, but also on me as a person. Given the existing educational framework, acceleration was the best option for my particular situation, and I certainly don't feel that I've suffered any ill effects as a result. Indeed, all the effects have been beneficial. But this is only because of the support and watchful eyes that were kept trained on my progress academically and as a person all throughout." So certainly, if you're doing academic acceleration, pay attention to how well it's going. If the kid is feeling overwhelmed, then pull back. If the kid is feeling bored and finds age peers boring, then go forward. And just pay attention and update the plan as it goes. So, overall numbers. Young people who have been radically accelerated skipped 3 more grades. Surprisingly, given the wariness with which Australian teachers regard acceleration, 17 of the 60 people were radically accelerated. None has regrets. Indeed, several say they would probably have preferred to accelerate still further or to have started earlier. She quotes Lubinsky, Webb, Morlock, and Benbow, 2001 paper from them. They report similar findings from a study of profoundly gifted SMPY accelerands. Some of the children had an unfortunate start to school before their abilities were recognized. Others were fortunate enough to enroll in schools where a teacher or school administrator recognized their remarkable abilities and almost immediately argued for a strongly individualized program. In every case, these young people have experienced positive short-term and long-term academic and socio-affective outcomes. The pressure to underachieve for peer acceptance, something one should never have in an educational environment, lessened significantly or disappeared after the first acceleration. Despite being some years younger than their classmates, the majority either topped their state in specific academic subjects, won prestigious academic prizes, or represented their country or state in math, physics, or chemistry Olympiads. The majority entered college between ages 11 and 15. Several won scholarships to attend prestigious universities in Australia or overseas. All have graduated with extremely high grades and, in most cases, university prizes for exemplary achievement. All 17 are characterized by a passionate love of learning, and almost all have gone on to obtain PhDs. In every case, the radical accelerans have been able to form warm, lasting, and deep friendships. They attribute this to the fact that their schools placed them quite early with older students to whom they tended to gravitate in any case. Those who experienced social isolation earlier say it disappeared after the first grade skip. 2 are married with children. The majority are in permanent or serious love relationships. They tend to choose partners who, like themselves, are highly gifted. Next, those who skipped 2 grades. The 5 young people who accelerated by 2 years report as much or almost as much personal satisfaction with their education as do the radical accelerans, although, like those who skipped 3 or more grades, the majority say they would have liked to have been accelerated further. Only 2 have taken PhDs, but the remaining 3 have taken bachelor honors degrees. Like the radical accelerans, they have entered professional careers, many of which utilize their remarkable abilities in math and the sciences. In general, they have enjoyed satisfactory personal and love relationships. However, those who were retained with age peers until 4th grade or later tend to find socializing difficult. Exceptionally and profoundly gifted students should have their first acceleration in the early years of school before they experience the social rejection that seems to be a significant risk for such students retained in mixed ability classes. The skills of friendship building are first learned in the early years of school, and children who are rejected by their peers may miss out on these early and important lessons in forming relationships. On the subject of how people develop social skills, I think lots of people haven't really thought out how it works. I think a large component of developing social skills is behaving in various ways and getting feedback. You try one thing, it doesn't go so well. You try another thing, and it goes better, and you adapt, and you iterate. If your experience is that everything you do leads to rejection, then that's not useful feedback. You're not going to improve your skills. You're not going to learn anything. If you stay like that for many years, then by the time you're, say, 12, you won't have social skills for the most part. And then even if you do accelerate to older kids who you would be naturally inclined to be friends with, you still won't have social skills at that point, and it may go badly. If one is in that situation, it seems like the best thing would be to, I guess, some kind of intervention therapy to teach social skills, or just continue focusing inward and ignoring social stuff for the rest of your educational career. And then once you're an adult, you can join the rationalist community, where they tolerate all kinds of weirdos, and you can slowly develop your social skills there. That's kind of a joke, but I'm not actually kidding about that. I think it has actually happened a lot.
To what degree is the rationalist community the sort of modern version of Mensa? Are they almost interchangeable, or?
I mean, I think like Scott's surveys have said like average IQ of those answering it was in the 130s or maybe even 140. Let's see, in terms of Mensa, like there's the sense of, as people say, the selection effect. People who go to Mensa meetups are those who have a high IQ and yet don't have anything better to do. But if rationalist stuff is sufficiently interesting, then maybe that's less of an adverse selection effect. Hopefully. Subjects accelerated by 1 year. The 5 young people who were permitted 1 grade skip are not deeply satisfied with their education. Their school experience has not been happy, and they would have dearly loved to have been accelerated further. After the euphoria of having new, challenging work, school became just as boring as it had been before the acceleration. These children's schools had been reluctant to accelerate them and were afraid that, while the grade skip had been successful, further acceleration might lead to social or emotional damage in later years. Obviously the opposite of what the research appears to show. In 2 cases, the school told the children's parents that they were concerned for the self-esteem of other students because the accelerated student was performing so much better than they were. This group has tended to take undergraduate degrees and stop there. Because they have not had the experience of pitching themselves successfully and over a period of time at work that is truly challenging and demanding, they have no idea of the full extent of their capacities. Perhaps because of this, they have tended to enroll in undemanding academic courses and have consequently found university intellectually unchallenging. It is with this group that a serious dissatisfaction with friendships and love relationships starts to appear. Two have had severe problems with social relationships. Finally, the subjects not permitted acceleration. The 33 remaining young people were retained for the duration of their schooling in a lockstep curriculum with age peers in what is euphemistically termed the inclusion classroom. The last thing they felt as children or adolescents was included. With few exceptions, they have very jaded views of their education. 2 dropped out of high school, and a number have dropped out of university. Several more have had ongoing difficulties at university, not because of lack of ability, but because they have found it difficult to commit to undergraduate study that is less than stimulating. These young people had consoled themselves through the wilderness years of undemanding and repetitive school curriculum, with the promise that university would be different, exciting, intellectually rigorous, vibrant. And when it was not, as the first year of university often is not, it seemed to be the last straw. Some have begun to doubt that they are indeed highly gifted. The imposter syndrome is readily validated with gifted students if they are given only work that does not require them to strive for success. It is difficult to maintain the belief that one can meet and overcome challenges if one never encounters them. Several of the non-accelerants have serious and ongoing problems with social relationships. These young people find it very difficult to sustain friendships because, having been to a large extent socially isolated at school, they have had much less practice in their formative years in developing and maintaining social relationships. So, yeah. It is likely... Mm-hmm.
So the students who were allowed to accelerate, did they have higher IQs on average than the ones who were not allowed? Was there any difference in distribution?
She doesn't mention it for the overall thing. I think there's some connection among the 15 that are written up in detail, but not a huge connection.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's talk about a kid. They're given pseudonyms. This one is called Adrian Sang. So he has the highest IQ in the group, and he had the most accelerated educational program. Starting in elementary school when he first entered it, he was permitted to progress through multiple years per year in different subjects as fast as he wanted to go. And he was the only one of the 15 children who answered yes to the question, do you think you've been able to perform at the limits of your abilities during your education? So he has the youngest International Math Olympiad bronze, silver, and gold medals. He became a Fields medalist winning mathematician. Many people call him the smartest living mathematician. His name is, of course, Terence Tao. Now I know that the educational program he went through is still suboptimal in terms of if you wanted to accelerate. He was put with normal kids of a higher age, but still they were normal. They learned at a normal speed. And the fact that he went through multiple years per year while the teachers were teaching the class at 1 year per year means that he must have been learning a lot of it at home. His progress through education appears to be mostly him learning the stuff at home. There's no question of bringing in expert tutors. The best tutors are probably those that are both very good at teaching and also very good at the subject in particular. Let's see. Now, a mentor of mine read a bunch of biographies of great mathematicians and scientists, and he said that there seem to be 3 qualities that determine success in those fields. The first is just raw intelligence, approximately which would be measured by an IQ test or other proxies. The second he called obsessiveness. In a more general context, this would be motivation. And the third quality is taste. And there's an obvious mathematization of this. So we can think of raw intelligence or some part of it, depending on the task, it might be working memory, it might be ability to make better connections, whatever it is. Raw intelligence is a force multiplier for the hours of intellectual work that you put into a subject. Then motivation, or obsessiveness, determines how many hours you put in. And then the operationalization of taste is the expected value per unit of intellectual work of the projects that you choose to work on. So then you literally multiply these three together, and that is the rate of value production via intellectual work. And you can also multiply by the length of a person's career. Don't die early. It's a bad idea. It tends to cause your career to go into decline. Now, I say autistic intellectual work. I'm kind of using a mechanical sense of taking neither inputs nor outputs from outside, but also probably in a psychological sense. But more generally, like scientific work today, some of it is the type of work that just one lone person, a hermit, can do by themselves. But a lot of it is working within a lab, working within a biotech company or something. And you have to work with other people. And so social skills matter for that. Getting good teammates, getting onto good projects, also directing the attention of the organization. Advocating for good research directions over less good ones. If one wants to maximize such things, how do we do it? The raw intelligence thing seems to be mostly genetics, and also just don't do things that screw up your brain, avoid lead in the water, and so on. Motivation, I suspect a large part of it is upbringing. There's probably some genetic component. And probably some just like how a person develops that you don't control and is also not genetic. And taste, my mentor believes that that can be taught, at least to some degree. And finally, there are social skills. Upbringing matters for that. There could also be an autism element to that, but I mean, a lot of smart autists do learn to, like, as someone put it, implement in software what most people implement in hardware. And then, let's see. So, like, in terms of the acceleration, the effects of academic acceleration for kids like these, I think that failure to accelerate them probably has a large negative effect on their motivation long term. The experience of sitting in class with boring material, things you already know, and just being frustrated about the fact that you can't get the teachers to let you do something else. I suspect that tends to have a more or less permanent negative effect on motivation. I mean, also the social skills, as mentioned, that's bad if you're stuck with age peers most of the time. There's always an element of chance, of course. There are going to be at least a few kids who are in an environment that is not set up well for people like them, who nevertheless turn out well, but usually what happens, it's not good. So I would rate our civilizational competency level at maximizing these things as not even trying. So what can we do? We can create extremely gifted children. Some people here are working on that. Having done that, it's a good idea to live near similar families and or create lots of siblings so that these kids have peers that are similarly gifted that they can play with, be friends and stuff. And then once there are people nearby, setting up micro schools seems like a decent idea. I do suspect that online education and AI tutors are able to give you a good education without basically any other input. At the very least, I strongly suspect that telling one of these kids to spend 1 hour per day on Khan Academy, and then they can do anything else for the rest of their time, will likely give superior results to putting them through normal public school. But we'll see about that. Given that education is handled one way or another, then just try to ensure that they have the opportunity to make friends with kids who are, I guess, amenable to them. If you must do normal school, then okay. Understand the children's need for acceleration and be prepared to push hard to get this for the children. and be prepared for the chance that the outcome where the school just refuses. Have some alternative in mind, like one of these. And so you can have ambition about these kinds of children. You can try to estimate like the chance of creating a world-shaking genius who will create medical advances or something else that are worth billions of dollars to the world. You can think of that as your way of impacting the world and try to maximize that if you want. Or you can just work on making children who are happy, healthy, and have a lot of abilities that will make it easy for them to get into a good career and hopefully carry on that project to the next generation. Reading through various of the kids' stories with what happened in school, it's very frustrating and in some cases depressing. Huge amounts of wasted potential and pain. But the amount that it sucks is the amount that it could be improved in the next generation. That's what I hope to do, and I hope many of you do as well. Thanks for coming.
I assume some of this is informed by your own experience. Would you be comfortable talking a little bit about it?
I wondered if someone might ask about this. Yes, I was not born in Australia, and I'm somewhat younger than these kids, but I did score 160 on an IQ test at age 4, and that was the ceiling of the test. I'm a very typical member of this. I learned to read before age 2, according to my mom. I read enormous amounts of stuff. I was not allowed to skip grades, and that was unfortunate. I do think that interfered with my social development in various ways. Starting in 7th grade, I was allowed to accelerate, and my math and verbal SAT scores at age 12 are competitive with various of these kids. Starting in 7th grade, I was allowed to take math with 9th graders, and I made more friends in that class than I did in the rest of my classes put together. I do think I disliked school a heck of a lot. I definitely have a jaded opinion of education, as these kids do. I chose to leave school at the end of 10th grade, and I never even bothered applying for college. I tried to do computer science projects on my own. I thought I was going to solve like real-time garbage collection and create the world's best programming language implementation. Worked on that for some time. Didn't pan out exactly, but I did learn some skills. And I eventually got a job programming, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years. It's decent. I do still think that if my upbringing had been significantly better, my motivation is pretty low, and I do think that's partly a result of what I've gone through. Let's see, but even with that being the case, Silicon Valley programming is a decent outcome. Let's see, and yeah, I hope to re-roll the dice on the next generation. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know much about this, but I'm very confused why the Palo Alto School District canceled laning when I imagine that Palo Alto has some of the most opposed to canceling laning parent population in the country.
Mm-hmm. That is some percentage of the parents, but it is not necessarily a controlling majority. I suspect the local politics may have something to do with it. I think arguments are basically of the form, being stuck in the lower lanes is harmful to the kids that are doing badly, and that's bad, and there isn't a total cost-benefit calculation. It's just if something is bad for these kids, then it must be bad. Mm-hmm.
I pretty much agree with almost everything you said. Only comment I'd like to make is that Are you familiar with Tsvi Benson-Tilsen's Center for Educational Progress project?
Sorry, what was that?
Tracing wood grain.
Tracing wood grains.
Yeah.
Someone else told me that he was doing something, and I have not learned about it. I think I should.
You should reach out because he seems to have extremely analogous ideas about ability sequestered classes.
Hmm.
That would probably be a productive partnership.
Nice. Yeah, sounds good.
Can you speculate more about like the role of AI tutors? Like I'm thinking of Neil Stephenson's like Diamond Age book where they have like the young ladies illustrated primer, right? Would that look like something like that, or is there another form that this would take?
I'm afraid I haven't read it,
Okay.
but so level 1 is just electronic courses that have existed for some decades, I guess. The added value of an AI tutor probably is like being able to dynamically analyze when the kid makes mistakes, like figure out what kind of mistakes they're making and maybe what part of the explanation needs to be fixed, or maybe to answer more direct questions from the kid rather than saying, kid, go back and read the whole thing and find out something. I think Zach first.
Yep. Just to expand on that a little, I'm pretty excited about AI tutoring in general eventually once it actually gets good. I don't think it's good yet.
Mhm.
And if you're interested in this, Andy Matsushak had a fantastic talk and blog post titled Exorcising the Young Lady's Illustrated Primer about all of the ways in which he thinks that's actually a terrible idea.
Mm.
Highly recommend.
Wait, so you're saying he doesn't think AI tutors?
So AI tutoring can be good,
Yeah.
I think, when it does more or less the same things that a skilled human tutor would do. But the Young Lady's Illustrated Primer is actually like kind of horribly manipulative in a whole bunch of ways.
Okay.
And people keep referring to it because it's like famous and compelling and happens to a protagonist. But it is not the kind of education I would want for my kids at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, what was the author of that?
Andy Matsushak. So Neil
I know,
Stevenson
but
wrote the Diamond Age.
I know the book, but sorry, I thought you said there's a blog post called like Exercising the Young Lady.
Yes,
Who wrote that?
Andy Matsushak, education researcher.
Steve.
Yeah, so, in contrast to the bad situation where the gifted kid is not allowed to accelerate and there's no enrichment, there's also this extreme limit, which some people refer to as aristocratic education, where the parents hire the brilliant people to tutor the kid, people that are both good at interfacing with the kid and are area experts. And so, like famously, von Neumann
Yeah.
was, in contact with the top Hungarian mathematicians already when he was quite young. And one thing people don't realize about Einstein, because there's all this sort of fake counter history about Einstein not being good in school and all this other stuff, which is totally wrong. But he even had a tutor who was a philosophy PhD student from the local university named Max Talmud, who would come to his house and tutor him when he was a young kid. So I think many of the really great brains in that era really did benefit from this sort of the opposite limit of really taking advantage of the opportunities that were available.
Nice. That sounds plausible. I also remember reading an excerpt of, I think it was John Stuart Mill's biography.
Right.
Like his father was very active and kind of harsh in tutoring him from quite a young age. Which, like, I don't necessarily endorse being harsh, but there is at least potential for it to go well.
This is, a bit on the less serious side, but, one of the parts of this profile was this interest in, like, high fantasy and science fiction. I mean, we all, I'm sure this is shocking to everyone here, and no one has experienced an interest in, like, why is it that, like, nerdy children tend to be really interested in these things? I mean, they're not necessarily, like, the most complex types of literature. I mean, like, and some of them are, but, like, some of them is kind of trash, but, like, nerdy people really like this kind of stuff. Is there any investigation as to why that is?
There was some discussion of that in the book. I think one thing that Mirka Gross mentioned is that science fiction and high fantasy often explore moral themes. It's sort of a tool to do that. I forget exactly. I could look it up, but I'm not sure if that's...
I mean, it's not the most productive use of time. I can help you with.
There
Yes, they exist. The people who don't like science fiction and yet manage to make something useful of themselves.
Do you think that this is something that like those human tokenization like projects can solve, where it's like you get like a percentage of like a person's net worth if you like invest in them early or something? Because it seems like there obviously like are gifted schools and stuff, but the problem is like these are obviously very expensive, so it's like you have to be extremely gifted intellectually, but also extremely gifted financially, and so there's like just a lot of people who are very smart, but just end up like not really going anywhere because of this problem. And so it's like it seems like you could construct like some business model where you go out and find these people, and then you like invest in them just by training them and giving them like a really fully accelerated program that like maxes out their ambition, motivation, and stuff, and then you just can maybe get some percentage of their net worth if you can find someone who can finance this, who's willing to accept like very long-term returns. Is this something that like you thought about?
Not too much, but potentially something like that sounds promising. There are, of course, also ways for it to go wrong, but it may be better to have that than to not have it.
It could have like very weird latent effects where like you feel obligated to not follow your passion and go into something that maybe seems financially more rewarding in the short term.
I mean, I think that is something that a lot of people feel for other reasons.
Well, yeah.
I think the classic model is the universities, where they get donations from their successful people, so they don't explicitly have to pay, but they do make a lot back.
University is pretty expensive, though. I guess there are scholarships, but yeah, that's true.
They're expensive, but also relevant.
Any thought on like early childhood pre-literate or pre-verbal education / stimulation, specifically in this?
Let's see, pre-verbal stimulation stuff.
I don't know. Have any differences been? What's the earliest age at which sort of differences have been recorded in terms of, or things that made a change later on have been, I guess maybe disproportionately made a change later on compared to?
Like in terms of an intervention of having things early on in their life, I'm not too sure about that. Like one aspect, I think for pretty much all these kids, their parents loved reading, and so they had lots of bookshelves in the house. That may count as a thing to do. It probably helps, although of course there's the selection effect as well. One does always have to bear selection effects in mind with any kind of study of this nature, and also studies in general. But yeah, it probably helps.
There's a book by Judith Rich Harris where she's trying to decide if it's nature or nurture, and she concludes that a decent amount of it is nature, but on the nurture side, peer group is much more important than parents, which I thought was crazy. But I wonder if it has something to do with the lack of a proper peer group can be kind of seen as a form of abuse, and sort of, yeah. Much to think about in context of the Super Babies project. It seems like the genes are one part, but
yeah, potentially, yeah. A lot of people say that it's good to send kids to school for socialization purposes, learning how to behave socially. Sometimes what they learn is how to be a bully or how to be bullied, of course. It is not a uniform thing. It is not a panacea. You should pay attention to what is actually happening and what you actually expect to work, and that kind of thing.
I hate to, I feel like there's a danger into going into like nerd grievance mongering, but what do you think is the reason behind the the extreme hostility among a certain mentality of person to these gifted programs? Is it just this egalitarian impulse, or is there sometimes it's not the most charitable interpretation, but like jealousy of the teachers, of like the kids being smarter than them, basically. maybe.
That happens too, yeah. Like there's various description of like teachers appearing to feel threatened by the kids, like correcting them, for example. Often they don't respond well to that, and that is really unfortunate. The broader question, let's see. Egalitarian impulse, it's possible that part of it is due to some envy instinct, which, like a lot of instincts, I would say that there are useful applications of it and bad applications of it. If someone else has more than you have, it is worth taking note of it and trying to figure out why that is. If it is because they're doing something bad, they're stealing or something, then it is a good thing to punish them for it somehow. But if it's just luck, then it doesn't seem good to punish them for that. And if they are better at managing things, if they have more because they're more careful and that kind of thing, then the right thing to do is imitate them.
So one of the specific reasons that came up was Australian teachers' industry unions. And there I think, I also grew up in Australia a little after most of these kids, but some things definitely felt familiar. There I think it really is mostly a really strong egalitarian instinct that has sort of reified into policy, which is saying like treating some people differently to others usually indicates that something is wrong with the system, and we should, for example, fix that by improving our universal public education or public health care or whatever else. And I think that sort of often sort of drifts or slips into the idea that everybody has the same needs, which I do not believe is true. I would like us to meet everyone's needs, but not everyone has the same needs. And that distinction, I think, just kind of gets erased by having a strong, unified political platform.
Yeah. They also seem to believe a lot of myths about gifted students and gifted education. Things like, if you're gifted in one area, then you can't possibly be advanced in other areas as well. And if...
That would be unfair.
Yes. They don't want to believe anything unfair. You have to drag them kicking and screaming to any such conclusion. Also a belief that if they are accelerated, then they'll plateau and perhaps even fall back and they'll become normal. The other kids will catch up to them. Which, like, if you demotivate them sufficiently, maybe that will happen, but not by default. Let's see. I think there were a few others, but I forget. Mm-hmm.
One thing that you see that's contrary to people, and you discussed this in the talk, contrary to most people's like intuition in this area, is that there's people often assume a negative correlation between like intellectual ability and athletic ability, and they're actually positively correlated. But you have this stereotype, which seems to be confirmed. I don't know if there's possibly a selection effect in the profiles here of these kids. They're the classically nerdy type of person that, like, even if they're good at sports, they're not really as interested in the sports as they are in the intellectual stuff. I mean, is there some way in which this could be like a selection bias of who they're going after, or?
Yeah.
People who are good at everything are just somewhere more interesting than we are. So
But even, the study is trying to get all kids at the, I mean, how, like, what is the, where are the ones that are too good, where are they going? And
I mean, Terrence Tao, I think UCLA.
For sure, but he's part of this group, and anyway, I'm just like,
I think a lot of them were very good at sports, and the study does say some of them weren't as interested, but a bunch of them were actually, they loved their sports, and were considering being like concert conductors and pianists and all these sorts of things, and so they did end up in a lot of different places.
Yeah, my middle school had like one accelerated class, so instead of skipping years, they just put you in a classroom with all the other kids who are more academic. And at least in 7th grade, 90-something% of the kids were also enrolled in the music class for band, and 80-something% were also doing fairly serious sport.
Nice. There are definitely major selection effects when people make sort of amateurish observations about, highly intelligent people. I think that social circles tend to be segregated by some kind of success, either financial or
Sure,
if they're in
yeah.
academic
I mean,
world.
it's familiar with like Berkeley's paradox, so I was just wondering in the specific context of this, but it sounds like, yeah, I mean, maybe, I mean, I haven't read the book, so they did maybe cast a wider net to get some of the people that did have a greater interest in sports and music.
I mean, you can also in Australia, you can imagine it is totally okay to be great at sports, and so if that is your passion, then you're just a normal person who's great at sports, and no one bothers to call you good.
One of the kid named Hadley Bond was very into sports, and in fact, team sports.
So speaking of selection effects, if you filter much more aggressively at much earlier ages, you're going to get much more regression to the mean. Like for example, if you start in kindergarten, a 160 IQ kid will be 130 IQ kid by adulthood. So if you do this much acceleration, it seems like you're going to wind up with like a lot of like kids who have like regressed to the mean, and when they've been accelerated somewhat, but like kind of like stuck. By high school, say you're a much more ordinary kid. Is this going to like present problems for like much more aggressive acceleration? They have like all these like fish out of water, so they regress back to their mean, and they're not so special anymore, but they're still like wildly out of place.
I don't think it should be a problem. Like they can, if they if they end up like having gotten really lucky on the IQ test and their true IQ is 130, then they still are learning.
The business did go back. The correlation is like only R.5 with like adult IQ. So that's just a regression to me. 60 down to 30, half.
Okay. Let's see. It's still the case that like if their true IQ is 130, then they are learning significantly faster than regular people, and it is useful for them to be in an advanced class. So if you were monitoring the kids that you've accelerated, I think it would be good for any school to be paying attention to how well all the kids are doing, and if some appear to be not challenged in the class that they are, then consider bumping them up, and those who are overwhelmed, consider bumping them down. So if you're actively paying attention to that, then someone who looked like 160 IQ but is actually performing at 130 IQ after that, I feel like they should settle into a decent place, some distance into this. I don't see any reason that it's not as if you have to commit them to the 160 IQ track from the start, and then it's impossible to change it anytime after that.
I mean, the uprooting is kind of harmful. You move them around grade, you are breaking the social relationships. You move up an entire grade. It's not just one class, different special grades. You are
Luckily, they often don't have that much in the way of social relationships to uproot in the early acceleration part. But let's see. I mean, you don't have to accomplish you don't have to skip all 5 grades at once. It just doesn't seem like there needs to be a major problem here.
So you mentioned team sports, but I also recall band as being a place where most of school, it is not actually a social advantage to be smarter than the other kids. That is not true in basically just team-based activities like band, where I was wondering if band was something that popped up as a thing, or if that's just not a thing in Australia, it sounds like.
I think it did say that a lot of the kids were very good musicians. I don't recall if it talked about band specifically.
Is there some kind of mapping between how many standard deviations and how many years ahead you should be advanced?
I mean, I think the ratio IQ thing is a decent starting point. And then, of course, if the kid has been learning much slower than they could have been learning for many years, then take that into account. I mean, ultimately, in terms of managing the specific kid, you could bump them up one class at a time until you reach the point where it's new material and it's a good place for them. You don't necessarily need to make a completely accurate estimate just up front from the IQ score.
I'm going to do like one or two more questions.
Sure. Or 0.
My question is on the social ability thing. So, do you think that the disability, I guess you could call it, right, like the lack of development on the social front is part of this type of intelligence that is measured by the tests, or do you expect just a function of the peer group issue?
I suspect it's primarily a function of like difficulty of getting along with the normal age peers.
Yeah.
It's also possible that some of these kids are autistic, and that would have its own effect. But I don't think there is a problem inherently directly created by intelligence.
Yeah, this might be digging in too much to sort of the like conceptual question involved, but I wonder, right, because it's like we have the sports kids, and then some of them are like super high performing sports kids, and we're like accelerating them, and then there's this cohort you're talking about. Are there any like super charismatic, kids, right? Because in the case we're talking about, it's like not, doesn't sound like it was extremely correlated that they were mega persuasive or something like that, but so that is some kind of human ability of note.
I mean, it does say that some of them became quite popular after skipping grades. And in Lita Hollingworth's book, her book is titled Children Above 180 IQ Stanford Binet, and she goes through the lives of 12 of them. And I think at least one of them was elected to class president. I think one or both of them say that the kids that they looked at are witty. I think the one who got elected class president was like, there was an anecdote where someone said he has short pants, look at him, he's small, and he had a clever retort, which unfortunately I don't remember, but he was able to adeptly manage that social situation. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned maybe some of these kids are autistic. Is there any true correlation between intelligence and this sort of Asperger's type? Or is it all just Bergson's paradox? I mean, because you certainly see a lot of people, stereotypically and everything, that are, somewhat deficient in social skills, but are very intelligent. But is that just a matter of if they were really good at both, they'd be like the president, so you don't see them?
I'm afraid I don't know. All right. Thank you.